Thank you everyone for joining us and good morning. My name is Dustin Miller. I am a lead tech ed project manager at Max Technical Training. I will be moderating and presenting Preparing to Apply Ohio TechCred workshop for you today. This workshop was initially created to answer our clients' questions about TechCred. And now it is being delivered to help any company in Ohio interested in applying for TechCred. And along the way, I promise you, no sales pitches. It's very much for any organization in the state of Ohio to understand what TechCred can cover, which is anything from business technology, healthcare, manufacturing, any of the technology, upskilling and training, and beyond. It is a uplifting initiative that is really amazing and how it's impacting Ohio organizations. And what we would like to share today is for those that have never applied to understand what steps you need to take to successfully do so. And in order to share the story of TechCred, I would like to introduce Denise Bartik, the president and CEO of Max Technical Training. And I would also like to welcome our guest, James Mastrovito, the program manager for IT talent development at TQL. Thank you for joining us, who has successfully utilized the TechCred program. Each of them will provide their unique insights on the program, and I'm going to bring James in later in our workshop to really share his experience. And so, as I mentioned, Denise Bartik, and my name is Dustin Miller. And today we're going to cover what is TechCred, kind of the TechCred 101 basics. We're going to talk about some of the TechCred success. What has been the impact on TechCred on organizations in Ohio? And then take a deep dive into how, is your company or organization eligible? What is the process? How do I apply? And then go through some of those questions. And first, I'd like to start off with Denise. And Denise, as a training provider who has seen the program since its start in 2019, before we go into the details, where did TechCred come from, and why do we have this initiative in the state of Ohio?
Well, I'm not sure I know where it came from, but basically it does come from the state budget. And the state puts aside a certain amount of money every year, and this has been going on for years. We've been in business we're in our 28th year, and I've seen programs come and go from the state where they've been for incumbent workers or unemployed workers, and there's still programs like that for unemployed or underemployed, but very few programs for the incumbent worker. And this program has really been, I would say, the best I have ever seen in probably the over 30 years I've been working with the state on various programs and with my own company and with various companies. And the purpose of this is really to upskill Ohioans so that Ohioans have the skills and the state can attract more businesses and keep businesses here. Because as we all know, the key to successful business is having successful employees. And if those employees have the skills and the state can incent the organizations to invest in those employees, that's exactly what they're doing. And so what they found was, hey, where we really lack is some of the technical skills. So technical skills, and you'll hear more about this later. Like Dustin said, Max does certain technical skills, but there's many other, we don't do manufacturing technology, we don't do hospital technology, and those are included in TechRed. So we are here to really just encourage companies to take advantage of this program. So Dustin, I'm assuming you want me to go over this slide real quick.
Yeah, let's talk about the basics of the
Okay.
numbers, some of the
Okay.
simple math of, how is this set up and how do companies look at the financing behind it?
Right. So overall, the most important number on this slide is $180,000 per year. Now, smaller companies may not take advantage of this much in reimbursable dollars every year, but a company like TQL is doing it every year. And there, and James will probably talk about this, there is like a strategy internally for how they utilize this and what are the priorities, because they could probably use more than 180,000 in a company like that. But basically, TechCred 101, there are 6 program periods per year. One of the things I hear over and over again from companies is that, oh, yeah, I know about it and we applied last year. It's every year and it's 6 times per year. It's not just one time. So in each program period, an organization, and it could be each EIN number, so each tax ID, can apply for up to $30,000 per period. They start in January, March, if I do the math right, May, I have to think about it, July, and then September. And then we have one more coming up here in November. So 6 periods a year. Each employer can apply for a credential or a class for up to $2,000 per class. A lot of employers think, oh, it's $2,000 per employee. No, an employee can get more than one credential or more than one class. So if a company, and we can go to the next slide and I'll do the math because I'm the math person here. So here's some examples. Let's say a company says, we want to do 15 different courses, and each course is $2,000 each. It could be 15 courses for one employee, or it could be 15 employees at $2,000 each. So if the class is over $2,000, the company needs to pay that, let's say it's $2,500, they need to pay that $500 over the 2,000. If it's under 2,000 each, like in example number 2, let's say they want 5 courses at $500 each, and then 3 courses at $1,000 each, that's only $5,500. And maybe that's for a smaller company, that's all they need. And that's all they'll apply for in that round. They don't have to apply for the whole 30,000. They can apply for a lot less. And then example number 3 would be, hey, this company has 10 courses that they want their 10 employees to take. They're $1,000 each, and then they have another 10 courses that are $1,500 each, all under the $2,000 range, and that's $25,000. So I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions on this so far.
And one of the things I want to mention real quick when we talk about this math, and I know that it's a world that Denise and I live in a little bit more, but a lot of the places you go and you look for your classes, they have what we would call open enrollment, that an individual looks for one class and they see that price and it can get reimbursed. But one of the things we are finding that is increasingly more common is the private and custom classes where it's not out of the box, it's not open enrollment, you're not just going and picking, it's really sitting down with Denise or I or one of the Max team members and saying, hey, we really need, like, we see the curriculum in this course or this course, but we want it to really be focused on our organization situation. And we can then customize what that cost is and do our best to try and make sure that it sits within that $2,000 per course mark. And we're finding a lot of organizations doing private and custom in-person or virtual training that is completely unique to them. So that's, when you look at some of these and you see, oh, well, 2,000 a course, 500 a course, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with custom curriculums. And I think that that's something to highlight here.
Right, right. So we've done private Excel training, which is 350 to $500 per person for a company where we might combine different Excel classes. So that would be well under the 2,000. Then we've done larger 5-day customized Java and Kubernetes and Cisco classes for a client that might be over the 2000 per person. But if we can even do a customized version of that class and maybe make it a 4 day or even keep it a 5 day, but customized for them, and they're giving us a number of people, like 10 or more, then sometimes we can drive that cost down per person. So work with us on those courses. They're not always fully customized. They could be slightly customized, or we can use the company's examples in the class. So I won't delve too long on that. So
So when you look at
talk to
these,
us.
so Denise, when we look at these numbers and we think about the cost of classes, I'm looking at $2,000, $500. Let's talk about the overall impact that the TechCred program has had across organizations and the type of investment that the state is making.
Yeah, so this is actually, I mean, Dustin and I don't have an updated slide. This is, I would say, what do you think, Dustin? 6 months or more old.
May, May or
And
June.
yeah, so this was, so TechCred has supported over 3,700 organizations throughout the state. I'm hoping it's getting higher. I still think that's a low number. The state doesn't like me saying that. But they've not done a great job of marketing TechRed, and they're really reliant on their partners like Max and others to support and promote TechRed. There have been over $140,000 credentials or classes that have been delivered to Ohioans, and total funds reimbursed, $150 million have been reimbursed to companies throughout Ohio so far, or organizations, not just companies. We've worked with nonprofits, we've worked with government entities, and of course, for-profit organizations. Any questions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the program periods? And we're going to provide you with resources at the end of closer to the end of the workshop. And I will also follow up via email with some really good resources and documents to help you with your first application, to keep track of the months that the program period is open. Some of those key and interesting timings, we'll make sure that we have some good resources for you. But does anybody have any questions at this point? Feel free to
Uh,
jump on in, throw them into the chat. It looks like we've got one. Go ahead.
so if Denise mentioned that the program there are 6 program periods and the last one would be in November, right? So what would be the deadline to apply for a credential for that program period?
So here's what I would say is I think you're looking at two deadlines possibly. One of the reasons that we hold this workshop in the middle of a month that the program period is closed is because it gives you 2 weeks to get some of the things you're going to need to apply together. And I think that's your first deadline is in the next 2 weeks before it opens in November. There's going to be some things that you need to obtain. One of those items we're going to cover in just a moment can take up to 10 days. So it will give you enough time to get what you need. And then for your actual application submission, you need to have that submitted and completed to the state by the end of November.
Okay.
So we're going to get you prepared right now and tell you everything that you're going to need, then give you enough time to get all of that together. So that way you're not rushing into your first application. And we're here to guide you through that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So that's a great question. Let me start to dive into what you're going to need and talk about the TechCred process. So the individual that is responsible for submitting your application and reimbursement, that individual is going to use an Ohio ID. Anyone in Ohio can apply for an Ohio ID. You don't need to do anything special for that. Anybody can get an Ohio ID. The second step in the process, and I'm taking the most simple boiled down version of this is filling out the online application for TechCred. Takes about 45 minutes, even the first time. It's really it's super easy. Um, the third important step in the process is that the submission that you were approved for is that the person takes that class within 12 months and completes it. And then you submit for your reimbursement. It really is a very simple four-step process. So let's dive a little bit further. And in order to be eligible for TechCred, you have to be an organization with a physical Ohio address. Um, you need to, of course, be a registered Ohio business, and they must be an Ohio resident, anyone who completes the course. Now, if you're hiring someone, for a quick example, out of state and they're going to be moving into Ohio, you can apply for their training and they can take the training while they're not in Ohio, but they must be an Ohio resident at the time of when you go to submit for your reimbursement. So you will have to have their Ohio information at that time. So that's where it says prospective Ohio residents. And then, of course, one of the things that's different about TechCred in comparison to other state programs is it is an employer upfront investment with a reimbursement once completed. So you do have to pay for the class. Now, one of the terms, or a couple of terms that seem to be, at least in the early days, a little confusing is it a course? Is it a credential? Do I need to pass an exam? Is this a certification? The traditional terminology of a credential, especially in the technical realm of things, is that you take a class, there's an exam that you have to pass, you may end up with some additional, letters in your email signature, but it is a lot simpler than that with the state. Any class or course that is industry recognized, technology focused, and short term. So we're not talking 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees. You need to be able to complete it in 12 months, can be approved by TechCred. And one thing I want to note very quickly, just so everyone in our audience understands, the training providers are not the ones defining the list of what is approved through TechCred. It is completely driven by the organizations in Ohio, what they want and what they need. So we do not have the ability to go to the state and add a class. It must be requested from an employer.
And Dustin, I'm just going to give some examples. I don't know if you were going to show some examples, but just short term, when we say less than 12 months, it can be a half-day class. For example, it could be a class on Excel when you're talking to Max. If you're a hospital and you want to have Epic training or some technology training, you can have that covered.
Yeah, half a day, full day, multi-day. Really,
Right.
that 12 months is, I believe their focus is to try and trigger people to get it done sooner rather than later. And that's why they do have expiring approvals, which we've not seen any negative impact from companies or organizations applying and then not using it. But I think for the overall long-term success of the program, what we do advise people is utilize your approvals. And we try to help create a long-term training plan to avoid any potential expirations, especially if you're putting the work in and already getting your approvals. So you've got 12 months until they expire. So how do you get started? If you believe, we've got our eligibility. Um, one of the things, and this is directly from the state, is identifying the skills and the employees that need the training. Partner with a credential provider, especially somebody with experience with TechCred. I can't speak for any training providers outside of Ohio, but there's certain documentation you need to provide during the reimbursement, and your Ohio training providers are going to be very familiar with the process, and I recommend leaning on the one that has the training that you need. um, and then apply for TechCred, complete the submission. And we're actually going to go through what that looks like. We've got a few screenshots for you of what the actual application process looks like. Um, and then once you have your employee from the organization enroll in the class, complete the course, and then you will need to upload proof of credential completion. And we'll get into those details a little bit later. And then we'll also talk about the reimbursement timing once you have completed the course. Now, these are the four most critical items you're going to need when you go to apply. It's going to be in the first thing that you have to fill out. Any organization that is going to receive reimbursement from the state of Ohio, they're going to need a payee ID number. Used to be called a supplier ID, but now it's the payee ID number, and you can visit ohiopays.ohio.gov to begin that application process. And that is the one that I said earlier takes about 10 days to get back if you do not have one. So most of the organizations that have one already have done business with the state and have received money in some way. If you don't have one, you will need to start that process. And that's why, like I said, in the middle of the month, or even early in the month, we try to give you enough time to be able to get this done before the next application period opens. Now, the next two, Ohio charter number and business detail report, that actually is a lot easier. If you look at the business detail report in the Ohio charter number, it says businesssearch.ohiosos.gov. That is a public search that anyone can do around any organization by name. One of the things I will note is your Ohio charter number is on the document that you're looking for. What I think can get a little confusing in this part of the process is when you search for your organization at businesssearch.ohiosos.gov, you're not going to see a document that says business detail report. You will find domestic articles for profit as example, and you'll probably look for the most recent year that that type of document has been submitted. And when you open it, you're going to see what looks like a certificate with the name of the organization. And then there is I believe, a 7 or 8 digit number right there on that certificate. And that is the Ohio charter number. So you actually can accomplish both of those items at the same time by downloading the correct document. One thing that I do help organizations with is oftentimes I will schedule meetings to sit down virtually with you and go over your first application. And I will also go do that business detail search for you, download the document, and send it to you to make sure you have the right one. So if you've not applied before, just kind of keep these things in mind, but know that we will schedule time and we'll help you do your first application. And then the last thing you're going to need is your federal tax ID EIN number. Those are going to be the first 4 items you need to do during the application process. I can already feel like I talked a lot right there in those 2 slides, so I'm going to take a quick pause. Does anyone have any questions about obtaining the critical items you're going to need when you go to apply?
The other thing I was going to say, Dustin, is for everyone, this always seems overwhelming. And it is probably the hardest part when you first do your first application. Once you get this in after your first application, it autofills. So you should be okay after that.
And again, feel free to unmute, throw some questions at us, or you can also add them into the chat and I can bring that out to the group. So let's keep moving along because we do have a lot to cover. Already did the Q&A there. This is going to be the first screen that you see, and I'm going to kind of flip through these, and this is just to give you a visual because I think it's helpful. But this is where you're going to put in your tax ID, your business name, filling out some of the basics. And as you can see, and let's look to the top a little bit, there are 3 tabs: applicant information, your training plan where you select your credentials, and then your application submission, which is really some of the fine print things you need to agree to because you are creating, once you receive your approval, you are creating a contract where the state is now bound to deliver on whatever it is they've approved. So this is what you're filling out is in a way a binding contract, but it's mostly with the state. And so you'll be completing those 3 tabs, but we're just going to give you a visual sense of what you're looking at. So first are really those critical pieces that we just talked about. Again, here's your Ohio charter number, your payee ID number. One thing I want to note, if you look at my screen, you will see where it says towards the top, upload copy of the Ohio Secretary of State's Business Detail Report. That button, when you first see it, is going to be grayed out. This is a little tricky thing to remember, but you'll want to scroll, complete everything else on the page and go all the way to the bottom and then click the save button. Once it saves and all of the rest of the data has been entered, that button will actually now appear clickable. Just a little quirky thing. You won't be able to do it in the order that it's giving it to you, but click save. And I'm also going to get this recommendation out of the way now. Once you fill out a page, click save before you click next. There is a chance if you filled all of it out and you hit next and something happens with the browser or it just doesn't transition well, you may have to go back and do it again. So just save yourself and make sure you click the save button. It's also going to ask you some basic business information, address, number of full-time employees, your website. And then it's also going to ask for the business contact information. Real quick, we recommend trying to centralize this communication. And if you can, make sure it's the same person that's also going to submit for reimbursement. I think it makes life easier based on what we've heard from clients. And make sure it's somebody that's going to be, I'll do a quick example. I worked with an organization recently. I think just because of bandwidth, they utilized an intern to fill out the first application. Well, the intern left before the first reimbursement submission. That gets really complicated. So when you go to fill this out, make sure that the point of contact, put some thought into that before you assign this. Some organizations are a part of a PEO, a professional employer organization. We've not run into that a ton. I think personally, since I've been working with the program one time, you'll just have to go collect some different information on that PEO, but it's not extremely common. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So now you can see up at the top that the tabs have changed from applicant information to training plan. This is where one of the things I recommend before you get to this step of the process is take note, maybe have a Word doc or take note on a few things. The name of the class, whether it's virtual or in person, the cost of the class. I'd also recommend having the URL to that specific class in case you need to get back to it quickly. And of course, the name of the training provider. So when I consult and advise on this and I'll call it shopping for classes, I'm copying all of that information as I'm looking because I know I'm going to need it when I fill out this application. One of the other things that's really good to utilize are your training providers and their understanding of the categories and titles of approved credentials within TechCred. There are some umbrella categories. For example, there's probably 7 to 10 individual Microsoft Excel class titles inside of TechCred, but at one point in time they decided to create one umbrella category, which was Microsoft Excel all levels. So if you see an exact match, I recommend using it when you're selecting your credential. If you see a broad match, like something all levels, that's also going to be fine too. But I would say try to find your exact match and work with your training provider that's familiar with the class titles and what's approved in TechCred. Real quick, any questions on that? I would say finding your credential category and then finding the actual class title is one of the areas where I get the most questions as our customers are going through the process. Now, when it comes to providing your trainee information, the individual or potential student taking the class, you do not need to provide all of their information at this time when you go to apply. You really just need the number of people taking that credential or number of prospective employees, the amount of reimbursement you're requesting, because what it's going to do right here is it's going to do some math for you. Because all they want to tell you is the last box at the end, total employer contribution. They want to make sure that, like we've talked about earlier, if it's more than $2,000, let's say it's $2,500 per class, you're requesting $2,000 in reimbursement per person. But then it's going to calculate how much you're going to need to pay that is not going to get reimbursed. So what you're really looking at here is just, it's doing some math for you. Any questions there?
And this doesn't need to be paid at the time that this is later. This is all in the future. And you don't have to do it either.
Yeah, you don't need to have paid or scheduled the course already. You're just looking for your approval. And there are some organizations that will submit for their approval, and they will pay and schedule classes prior to receiving it, especially if they've been in TechCred for a while and they know what's been approved. Others will do the submission. They will wait until they fully receive the approval via email, and then they will pay for and schedule their courses. Each organization works a little bit different. And on the last tab, these are the terms and conditions that you're agreeing to. And this is really what finalizes the contract between yourself and the state. And so this will be the same exact, the same name and title and the same person that has submitted all of the courses and information up until this point. Now, very quickly, let's say you fill out your application in the upcoming period on November 15th. You do not have to hit submit at that time. You can hit save, go back and remove, add, or edit your submission. But once you click submit, there is no further communicating or updating or changing of your application. So just keep that in mind. You may give yourself, okay, if I do it on the 15th, I'm going to give myself another week. I'm going to wait, see if anybody else wants a class, or if somebody changes their mind. You do not have to hit submit as soon as you do this. You can hit save and go back. Before I move on, any questions on the 3 tabs in the application?
I'll just make one more comment. What Dustin just said about not submitting and saving, we've also had clients that saved and forgot to submit. And then they're like, what happened? I didn't get, so if you're going to do that, I mean, it's a great suggestion, but just remember to go back and submit.
That's also true. Okay. So let's talk about your reimbursement. The first thing I will say, you will need the proof of credential completion. Your training provider will assist with that documentation. You'll usually receive a certificate. You will need to show the invoices and the proof of payment. So you will need to show the invoice from the training provider to confirm what the total charge of the class was. And then you will also need either a canceled check, a billing statement, a bank statement, showing that you paid that amount that matched with the invoice. One of the items that does get a little complicated, we have found, is you are going to need to fill out with some personal information for each student that completes a course that you want to be reimbursed for. You will need to provide the last 4 of the social, the date of birth, county of residence, wage before and after credential. There is a checkbox, which I will tell you really quickly. You used to have to fill out a piece of paper and scan it in and send it. It is now online that you fill this out. So the W-4 and IT-4 verification is really just a checkbox that you click, just saying, yes, this information, this documentation is being held with the state and is available. And then the employment timeline. For a lot of this information, I do believe they are data points for making sure that the right people are receiving the training and also to prove program success. You do not, as an organization, you do not have to prove or provide a wage increase after course completion. The state is not expecting because somebody took Excel level 1 that they're getting a raise. But there are going to be situations where someone does take training. And I think the data behind the success of, hey, you've completed all of this, and now we're going to increase based on, your upskilling and value. I do think that there is some validity there. And I think that those data points can only help extend the program's longevity. Denise, do you have any notes on the reimbursement? No? Any questions on reimbursement? One of the things that we are seeing is we have noticed a very close collaboration with organizations' human resources departments. Not every organization is comfortable with providing this type of information about their employees. And right now, the reimbursement online process is not at the point where each individual that has taken a class can go in and provide their own information. So it is going to have to pass through hands, or like I said, we've seen a lot of close collaboration with human resources, and maybe they're the ones submitting the reimbursement. So just something to note. And I know we're throwing a lot at you, but let's get to a different side of this. And James, thank you for being patient with us. and letting us get through the first part of the presentation. I think sometimes it's helpful to give people the reality because, like Denise said at first, it's a lot to take in. It does get easier. But James Mastrovito, sir, thank you for your time. James is the program manager for IT talent development with TQL, and I wanted to spend some time with James really talking about his experience with the program and where TQL has been with the program. So, James, thank you for joining us. And let's just start off with the first question. And what for an organization that has utilized TechCred, what we think is very well, what does the TechCred program tell you about the state of Ohio?
Well, thank you for having me today. First start off, but it tells me a lot about the state of Ohio that they are investing in our workforce, investing in our IT and growing IT organizations, or all organizations that use IT to make sure that all of our workforce is upskilling and providing additional funding. It's been a great program so far for me. I took over this job last October, so it's been about a year, and I've been running pretty hard with TechCred and pushing it pretty hard within our organization.
Well, and I have inside information, so I already have some ideas about the TQL upskilling culture. I know we've seen everything from boot camps to private training to people taking open enrollment courses. So I think this is like, I don't know if this is a buzzword or it's not a new term, but what does an upskilling culture mean to you? And what has TechCred meant to the TQL upskilling, organizational culture?
Uh, to me, it's creating a workplace where learning is continuous and it's not an option. That's one of the big things here at TQL. We encourage our folks to continually, dive out and learn more to keep continuing their education. Um, with TQL and used leveraging tech credits helped us embed growth, adaptability, and innovation within our company. Helps our employees feel empowered to pursue credentials that normally they may not do so when it comes to funding wise. And also helps out our organization as well, to achieve different business goals with funding that's on the table from the state. So it's been a really good program, means a lot to us. I took on this role. It wasn't highly publicized within our organization. But since I've taken over, I've done my best to explore it out to all of our employees, including our managers, to be able to identify where they need areas of growth, and we help supply that.
I would imagine that has a pretty positive impact on retention as well.
It does. It does. We do have providing some of those opportunities for our staff definitely helps to keep people around and keep on growing.
Now, as far as the process itself, and like you mentioned, last October, it's been about a year. So what has been the easiest part of TechCred? And then, kind of other side of that coin, what's been the most challenging?
Well, the easiest part, I don't have to worry about doing any of the submission parts. Our finance team handles doing the submissions. They're the ones that do it for me. So for me, the easiest part is just trying to put together what courses we're going to have and send out to my finance team, and then they submit. So that's been pretty easy. The challenge is, trying to get together. My challenge has been pulling together and finding courses that are either TechCred approved already, the credential. Challenges sometimes are trying to, if you have a certain course that is new that doesn't have a credential already assigned in Ohio TechCred, having to apply for different credentials. We've had to do that a few times this year. I know TechCred is getting a little more stringent with accepting some new credentials, but we have a due process in place that we're focusing on. Obviously, working with Denise and her team to make sure to generally use Max as our primary provider. So obviously, have good conversations with them to make sure that what we're applying for and how we're applying for it has the best chance to get approved.
How does I mean TQL? I just feel like I've witnessed its growth, so it's not hard to see. How does the state reimbursement for technical training help in that growth or sustaining that growth?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So for organizations that are growing quickly
Mhm.
or that are, expanding and seeing a lot of success and obviously adding new people, upskilling people, what does TechCred mean to sustaining that? To bringing in new upskilling and new education, how does that, when you grow that quickly, there's a lot of adaptability that needs to come into
Mhm.
play, especially within your team. How has TechCred helped in continuing that sustainability?
Yeah, so it really does help us to scale our technological training. And it also helps to offset some of the costs that we have, obviously. So all of our budgeting for trainings do not come out of our in-house pocket. So I'll take for an example, right now we've transitioned over to using ServiceNow as one of our applications that we brought in to use service that we brought in. So we have to upskill our staff when it comes to administration of ServiceNow, how to develop within ServiceNow, how to automate ServiceNow. So we've worked on using TechCred and leveraging it specifically for 3 courses that we're going to be doing, hopefully within this remainder of the year, to be able to upskill our staff and get them to where they need to be. TechRed also helps us to increase on our onboarding, role specific skill development, retention, which is a big one. Trying to keep everybody growing, keep everybody here at TQL. Just know that we have this program. Now, granted, all Ohio companies have the availability of TechRed, but it also enables us to offer more courses and give people the ability to grow and also allow our company to grow.
So last one for you. And again, I appreciate you joining us and being gracious with your time and responses. For an organization that is still hesitant to apply, what advice would you have for them?
Start early, communicate the process out. Again, educate your leaders or educate your team. One of the first things I did was after I went through this course or this seminar, I put together a presentation to present to our leadership team, because that's generally where our course recommendations come from, where they reach out to me to help identify some classes on the liaison. So really work on trying to build up a nice backlog of courses to have that ability. I'm still building mine. It's been a year. Generally every application period, I'm able to fill mine, and I have filled it up to that as close to that 30,000 max per application period. So far for 2025, we've had roughly $122,000 be approved in our application process, and we still have one more to go. Which again, I expect that we'll probably try to max that out as much as we can as well. So prepare early, have a nice backlog of courses to pick and choose from. So that way, when you get to the time for application period, you have that available. If you are applying for a new credential, this is a trick that I've learned and started to do over time. Apply for just one single seat. If you have one course credential and it doesn't get approved, now you're out of that money. So we've had that happen before. So in the past, so what we do now is if it's a new credential, we apply for one single seat. Once that's approved, now that credential's in the system. In the next application period or down the road in the application period, we can apply again for additional seats. That way you're making sure you're maximizing how much money you're going to be recouping from the Ohio TechCred program. Already approved credentials, those should be a shoe-in, apply, get it pushed through, and then you should get reimbursed for those. So that should be approved. And the other big thing is just make sure that you're keeping track of all of your submissions, keep track of how many seats you have remaining for the rest of the year, because you do have a time frame before those credentials do expire. So those are some of the big things to be aware of as you go through the process.
Well, James, thank you very much. Again, appreciate your responses. Thank you for the information. That was some
Of
great
course.
advice. I even have some notes for myself after some of the lessons learned there. And one of the things that we do work on with our clients and customers is we do receive a public records report every single month on where companies are with how many seats they have left. And we also have a spreadsheet that we use internally that tells us when it's going to expire. So we do a little bit of account management in that way as just kind of an added value. And so that's something that obviously if we work together and can help you in your application, that's information we're happy to provide and assist with. So James, thank you very much again. Let's go ahead and run through. We just have a few more slides. What's really popular right now that we're seeing a lot of TechCred submissions for is Office 365 is always popular, but we're seeing a ton of Microsoft Copilot, and we've been adding new courses every month because it's just a hot topic. CompTIA, Microsoft Azure, some machine learning courses, a lot of data analytics and Power BI, Agile and Scrum, SAFe, ITIL, and if you don't see it here on the list, it's likely that we have it, or maybe we have a partner that we can coordinate that. Let's do a quick little, some of the most frequently asked FAQs. Is there a limit to the number of classes someone can take? No, do your best to use what you apply for. Are wage increases required after training? No, they are not. I think James touched on this. If I don't see my credential, can it be added? Yes, approved credentials are employer driven. And I think that was great advice from James. If you don't see it, apply for one seat and then go after some more once it's approved. Like I said, I took some good notes on that. Does TechCred cover exam costs post-training? Yes, it does. So you may take a class and then you need to go and take the exam. You can apply for that exam cost in the same way as applying for that class and get that approved and reimbursed. Can a solo entrepreneur be approved? No. The business must have a non-residential Ohio address. No PO boxes. It needs to have an actual brick and mortar, and they must be W-2 employees. And when can companies be denied reimbursement? We've seen denials for trying to get approved or around reimbursement that non-technical courses, when employees leave prior to submitting for reimbursement. And unfortunately, sometimes we've seen incorrect company information. You may have a quick example. You may have an organization that is really three. They've got three different EINs, and when they applied for the employee, their submission for approval was under one EIN, but the employee was under a different EIN. So you just got to watch some of those little technical and tricky things, and these are just lessons we've learned along the way. I will leave it open for some questions right now. I'm going to let this slide hang up here for a little bit because you can visit our TechCred page. You can either get there by scanning the QR or it's right on the top of our navigation when you visit maxtrain.com. We also have a dedicated, you could also from here visit the Ohio TechCred page. That's where you can actually take a look at what credentials are approved. And then also there is a state program guideline. You can access it here, but I will tell you, I'm going to be sending you an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of our session today, if you want to share that or if you want to review that. And then what we've done is we've taken the program guideline, the official state program guideline, combined that with some of our company information. We also have our own TechCred doc, which is kind of our TechCred 101 basics. A lot of what you've seen today is on that document. There's also, and one thing I will show you in our next slide, there's our program timings to remember. Again, when the application period is open, when it's closed, and then also some of the other important timings like reimbursement and things like that. I've smashed all of that in some of our presentation today into a nice PDF for you. I would recommend saving that, downloading it, save it to your folder. That way you always have our TechCred info, our contact information, as well as the program guidelines directly from the state. That's going to be a really helpful resource for you. So here's our contact information. Again, Denise Bartik, Dustin Miller. You can keep our information here, but I'll be sending this info to you in that PDF in our follow-up email. And this document is included, the one I just mentioned, just a quick infographic, how long it takes to fill out the application, how long it takes to get approval, how long you have to complete the training, and then the reimbursement and your program period. So I'll be sending all of this to you in the follow-up email, so you don't have to take notes on all of it. And again, our next application period is coming up this November. So you've got a few weeks to get things together before the program period opens. I will pause here and see if anyone else has any questions for us today. Julie, Terry, Carrie, Praveen, anyone, go ahead and unmute and let us know how we can help.
How do we see the breadth of technical courses available?
So let me go ahead and I'll put it into the chat because I will tell you it takes a few steps to get there. So I'm going to make it really simple. Normally what I do is, and I'm actually looking at the website now as I'm talking to you, is I normally go to apply and then learn more about approved credentials, and then I'll go to the credential list. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into our chat real quick. This is the page you're going to need right here. This page is the Ohio TechCred page that goes to their credential list. You're going to see 8 categories that they organize the credentials into. And then you can do a search based on a subject or potential course title if you're looking for AI. Depending on what you're looking for, you can use that search to find the approved credential. I would say for most people we deal with, we're looking in the business technology or information technology areas. But this is where you'll also see they have manufacturing and healthcare. But this is where you can search for your course. And once you find, what it'll do is it'll bring you up a list of the closest credentials available. And then once you select the one that you think is closest for you, it'll actually then show you a list of providers that can provide that training for you.
Thank you.
Good question.
Dustin, I do have a question if we have time.
Oh, absolutely, Terry. We are at 12 o'clock if you need to hop off, but Denise and I are both available to stay on a little bit later. So go ahead, Terry.
So if I'm working with a business, a small business with an industry specific credential or training interest, it is a technical software that they'd like to get training on. If I understand you correctly, the best path is to submit for that for maybe just one individual and then see if that gets approved.
So what's going to happen is when you go in, and I would recommend that when you do this for the first time, let's schedule 30 to 45 minutes and let me just have you share your screen and let's walk through it together. That's my first recommendation. But when you go into the credential selection, a little box is going to pop up, and then you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that box, and there is a checkbox. You hit that checkbox, and what's going to happen is you're going to get taken to provide in a little bit greater detail about that course. So it'd be really helpful to have some information from the training provider because it is going to ask for some additional information more than if it was approved, because you're basically going to be submitting it to the state, asking them to add it to the list.
Gotcha. And if this is it's kind of a niche kind of thing, that the one I'm talking about, it's pretty much it's kind of like manufacturing. It's part of like the garment industry, which is kind of popping up in some of Appalachia right now.
Sure.
And kind of considering some of the training for that is not available in Ohio. So like a provider would need to come from, California or something like that. Is that acceptable?
It is. I'm going to give you both sides of it. It is acceptable, but of course, as an Ohio training provider, we understand that you may not be able to find everything in Ohio, but we always encourage people to please try to find it in Ohio. But
Absolutely.
no, you do not have to. You can go get training from somewhere else. You will just need to make sure that you provide a good amount of information. You'll need to provide the training provider's name. So the state is not going to limit you or prevent you from getting what you need. But yes, we do like to try and influence people to, use a Max Train or somebody here in Ohio versus say a Udemy. And
No,
also
absolutely.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
on board with you, Dustin, and that's why I'm on your webinar, because I'm a fan of what you guys are doing. I'm just have these weird questions with things outside the norm. I'm pretty good
No,
at
no,
those.
that's
Right.
completely normal. But yeah, it was interesting. I had somebody the other day that was actually they were looking for drone pilot training. And that's like, like you said, like that's a niche thing that and that is technology focused, it's industry relevant, and they can complete it in less than 12 months. So you're right. The next step is to really just get it added to the list.
Well, Dustin, I'm also looking for drone repair training. If you happen to come across that, please let me know.
Absolutely. They are items that can be approved by TechCred, and if you do find it, um, even if you're not getting the training from us, reach out and let me know that you want to schedule time to do your first application, and I'll walk you through getting that drone repair training submitted as something to be added to the list.
I appreciate you, Dustin. Thank you.
Absolutely. Carrie, did you have anything else?
Uh, no, I just want to look into how does a company become a provider.
A training provider on the list. When people look at the classes, Denise, I'm gonna throw that one back to you.
I don't even know right now, Carrie. I think there probably is. If you go to the TechCred site, I mean, we haven't had to do it in the last 6 years, so I don't even know anymore. Um, but there is a link I'm looking at right now on the TechCred page for training providers. Um, so there may be something here that you have to, there's a page here. I can put it in the chat if you want. Let me do that
Okay.
right now. And where's the chat? There we go. All right, here we go. So look at that. There's a list of things the provider must have related to Ohio. And then I think that if it's unique, like Terry was just talking about, I think they can be outside of Ohio.
And then I'm just thinking of a company I'm affiliated with. They have an IT platform. They're they're out of Wisconsin.
Hmm.
So if a company would choose to use that platform, the company in Ohio could then that provider provide the training to use the platform.
Possibly. You mean like it's an e-learning platform?
A what?
Like an e-learning platform?
Well, it's an actual platform. It's a operating system and a talent management platform.
Okay.
But there's a fair amount of training or
Yeah.
understanding how to use it.
Yeah. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay.
So that we can, look at what they can do.
Okay.
Possibly. I would think the only thing that they really since many years ago that they made sure to get away from was companies doing in-house training and wanting to get reimbursed for it.
Right. They don't
That's
do that.
They don't that is not something that they allow. I think a few kind of skirted in the early years, but that's something that they've made sure does not take place. But I think what you're saying is if a company, for example, bought a new CRM
Right.
and needed training on that CRM, And could they get reimbursed for what that company would charge them for the cost of training on that CRM that they were implementing, if I understand you correctly.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next application I was just looking at opens November 3rd, Dustin, and it actually closes December 1st. So they're giving you a little grace with Thanksgiving.
Oh, well, that's nice of them. When
Yeah.
you do go to apply, if it says it's open November 3rd, do not be on your computer at 9 o'clock in the morning ready to apply. We have tried that twice in scheduled meetings. It's safe to say maybe somewhere in the 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon is when we see it open. So I have two times have scheduled meetings to help with applications, and they've both been about 9 or 10 in the morning, and it's not ready for us at that time. So just as a small note, later on in the day, on the first day, it's supposed to be open.
Good advice.
Well, Terry, Carrie, you guys are the only ones left for us,
Yeah.
but I appreciate your questions and unmuting and participating. We love that. Thank you for your time today. I hope it was informational, and I will be sending out an email tomorrow with our follow-up materials and resources. And like I said, there's like a 6-page official program guidelines. I recommend reading through that as just kind of a refresher to a part of this, but to also see all of the details directly from the state. But thank you everyone for your time, and I appreciate you being with us.